I think that it's so important. You can get paid media is very important, of course, but you almost can get a little lazy if you're so used to being able to pay for your impressions that you're getting. I've been really impressed with the way that some people utilize organic social to get strong growth, and it has to be so much more of a steady, repeatable channel. And as a result of that, it helps create and spin that flywheel that helps you create content that you can put on the rest of your channels too.
This is Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, your go-to guide to solving your biggest marketing agency challenges authentically. I'm your host, Mike Alton, and each episode is an honest and frank look at what agencies go through, from turning clients to tackling tech and ideas that you can apply to your own business. And now, the rest of today's episode. Welcome back to Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, where each and every week we're talking to marketing agencies like you, going through many of the same struggles you're going through and sharing their stories. Subscribe to find in each episode inspiration, motivation, and the perspiration that go into growing and scaling agencies like yours. Whenever we talk with our marketing agency clients and audience, they share that their number one challenge is growing and scaling their agency. Not only is the task itself hard, figuring out what services to offer and market, how to adjust pricing to grow and attract new clients, how to increase headcount accordingly. There are so many variables that affect agencies, such as leadership, regionality, geography, and more, ensuring that your solution to growing your agency has to be unique. But that doesn't mean you have to invent it wholesale. This podcast is designed to talk to and learn from other agency owners so that we can apply those ideas to our own businesses. In this case, how have other agencies dealt with managing fully remote teams or maintaining culture or quality across teams from the moment of onboarding on? That's exactly what Zach Boyette is going to talk to us about. Zach is the co-founder and managing partner of Galactic Fed, a growth marketing agency that in over just 6 years, he's built into a powerhouse with 150 employees across 25 countries, driving hundreds of millions in revenue for over 600 clients. He's a growth hacker, software developer, Stanford MBA, and ex-Google employee. With deep expertise across the full spectrum of digital marketing, Zach's a proud digital nomad who travels the world full-time, rarely spending more than a month in a given time zone. Hey, Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. Great to be on the show, and quite the intro. I appreciate you doing your homework there.
My pleasure. You did all that. I'm just reading it, but tell folks, you said you're a fully remote digital nomad. Where are you at today?
So the nomad journeys have paused for a bit, but are just about to restart starting in July or so. I'm actually in Palo Alto right now, hanging out in the Stanford ecosystem for a little bit more, soaking up the California sunshine before I hit the road. Probably will be New York for a bit later this year, Kentucky and Tennessee to see the family, and then back somewhere warm for the winter. So Mexico City, Cape Town, Lisbon. Haven't really decided yet, but not a cold fan, so we're going to go somewhere warm.
Love it. That's amazing. One of our other guests, Ann Popolizio, has a very similar lifestyle. In fact, we touched on some of those notes there, but her agency is very different from yours. And that's where I'd like to start today by having you tell us a little bit more about Galactic Fed, the kind of work that you're doing, the kind of businesses you work with. Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, so I started Galactic Fed in 2018 with my business partner, Irina. We both worked at a B2B company before. I was running paid media. She was running SEO. Galactic Fed now is a full stack growth marketing agency. We do everything from paid media, SEO, as we did originally, but now we've expanded to email marketing, web dev and design, organic social influencer work, pretty much everything across the online digital growth spectrum. Initially, I'd say our main focus was on high growth startups that are trying to grow really fast, anywhere from pre-seed, kind of smaller baby startups, to Series B, Series C. We've expanded quite a bit now. We work across the full range. We've worked with several Fortune 500, so Fortune 50 companies as well. Our team is around the world. We're in 25 countries, I believe, the latest count, around 150 folks on the team at Galactic Fed. It's been a really fun journey scaling the company in the last 6 years to that size, and I have a lot to share.
That's awesome. I'm excited to ask you about all these topics, but one quick follow-up question, because I know you're a growth marketing agency and you mentioned organic social. So I'm just super curious. Is that something that you deliberately added within that umbrella? Did you consider it part of growth marketing, or are you doing it because you're working for those clients and they just happen to need organic social?
I'd say it was a bit of both to start. Like initially, I was really laser focused on paid media and SEO, since I felt that those were some of the bigger chunks of what our clients were looking for. At least I'd say 70% of clients in the beginning were looking for that. And we had requests for organic social, maybe some influencer work as well, and we started doing that as it happened. And I really fell in love with that as a channel as well. I think that it's so important. You can get paid media is very important, of course, but you almost can get a little lazy if you're so used to being able to pay for your impressions that you're getting. I've been really impressed with the way that some people utilize organic social to get strong growth, and it has to be so much more of a steady, repeatable channel. And as a result of that, it helps create and spin that flywheel that helps you create content that you can put on the rest of your channels too. So I think that organic social has given it being organic as a higher degree for some folks of authority and trust, since people aren't paying to be there. And so I think in certain niches, certain markets with certain messages, it can work very well.
Love that concept of, yeah, organic social as a flywheel if you put in the time and the
Of
effort
course.
and the creativity. That's fantastic. So you talked about how you're up to 150 folks now with your agency. And when it comes to growing an agency to that size in 6 years, no less, that sounds incredible. It also sounds incredibly challenging. What were some of the hurdles that you ran into?
Yeah, so initially, as many listeners probably can relate, I just wanted to get out from under myself and start hiring out for everything that I wanted to do least at a given moment. So in the beginning, that was hiring folks when I was running the paid media side. Let's use an example. I was hiring folks to actually run the Google ads, run the Facebook and Instagram ads, et cetera, as I was working with the clients directly. So those more account operational specialist type of folks. Then we got enough revenue where I could justify hiring account managers, who are the people interface directly with the clients. And then after that, it was sales, because that was taking up a large amount of my time. And really, I just kept focusing on what was the most pressing, the most important thing at the moment, and going from there. But challenges, oh man, Mike, there's been a lot. There's been ones from the exogenous shocks, like COVID was tough for all of us. I think we lost 30% of revenue in like 2 or 3 weeks from clients pulling out. And at that time, we were on much more short-term contracts, 30-day opt-out type of situations. That was tough, but I really rallied and was able to not let go of anyone on the team, which I was proud of. Just cut my compensation down quite a bit and cut some of our ongoing initiatives, but was able to keep the whole team there. Suffice to say, that was a tough situation for us. I'd say really, really scaling, as many listeners of the pod can probably appreciate, some of those junction points that I highlighted of going from, just me to a specialist team to account management team to sales, it can be really challenging and really scary. I'd say sales is one of the ones, when I speak with folks a lot, they say is the scariest, where they say, I don't know how I could possibly get someone to sell Galactic Fed as well as I do it. No one will ever be able to have the passion, the background, the energy that I do for this company and know and be able to speak to our strengths. So I'd say that took us a while to get at first. We have an absolute rock star sales director, Michelle, and the team that she runs are really great now, but it took a while for us to get to that point. Those are a few examples. Happy to give more.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, because you listed some things that you didn't like doing and farm those out, which is absolutely a fantastic framework. We talked earlier in the show with Matt Hines. We talked about the EOS framework for running a business or a marketing agency, and that was certainly one of the things to farm out and delegate. What were some of the things that you really enjoyed? I don't know if it's sales or something else that you kind of held on to as long as you possibly could.
Yeah, it's like it's funny because all the things that I'm talking about, with the exception of maybe bookkeeping, I never really liked that. But all the things that I've done at some point in my career in building Galactic Fed, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed the sales. I really enjoyed the account management, helping the clients grow. I really enjoyed speaking with the clients and learning the stories of these founders, business owners, marketers. I enjoyed documentation, all these things. But I'd say what I enjoy most was the parts of the work that align with building the team. So I absolutely love the clients that we work with, and we do really great work. But I'd say nowadays, 6 years in, what really gets me up and gets me going, it's just knowing how I can best support my team at Galactic Fed, the people within us, to make sure that they can work to their potential, that they can feel like they're giving their absolute all for our clients and doing the best without being distracted, without being stressed, without being overburdened. So that may come down to me helping roll out new games or community activities or cultural events within Galactic Fed. That may be me helping our sales team figure out who we can target better, so that we can grow at a faster rate. That may be helping our account management team figure out the right way to communicate with clients on the right cadence. But what really gets me out of bed is the realization that this is helping our team do a better job and feel better about themselves.
Love that. So let's talk about those people. Here at Agorapulse, we are a 50-50 split. We have offices in Paris, and about half of the company works out of the Paris offices, or at least nearby. The rest of the company is remote. I'm here in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been with Agorapulse for 6 years, and sad to say, I've never worked out of the Paris office for more than a few nights. I work remote. So we can relate to some of what you're talking about being 100% remote. And I know one of the interesting aspects of having a fully remote workforce is that on the one hand, it can be really more beneficial to find folks. You're not limited to people within a certain geographic range. On the other hand, it seems like it would be really challenging, particularly on the hiring and onboarding side. I mean, how do you like interview and that sort of thing? Talk to us about how that's been a struggle and how you've kind of overcome it at Galactic Fed.
Yeah, well, Mike, you hit on two of the big points, right? Which is that yes, we were able to find the most wonderful, talented, smart, clever, hardworking folks in the entire world, wherever they may be. I'm in Palo Alto, California right now. I don't just have to say we're going to find the best, XYZ person in the Bay Area. I could find them whatever country they're in. So that's great. But yes, with that does come challenges. I always give the advice, especially folks trying to start a remote company. You definitely can do a company that was fully in person and then go to fully remote, but it's a lot easier to start the opposite way, or rather to always be remote. To start the company remote from the start, all the principles, the practices, how you hire people, how you onboard people, that's always been in your DNA. And I think we saw a lot of people struggle during COVID to bring a fully in-person company to remote, but I digress. I think what helps us is, as I mentioned there, we really have gotten it down to a science of identifying the right people who will be good fit in a remote environment at Galactic Fed, that maybe they've worked remotely in the past, that maybe they talk about things in interviews that indicate that they're highly independent, self-starter, and self-motivated, because those are important things for being remote. Mike, probably working remotely yourself for 6 years, you don't have people over your shoulder telling you what to do. There's no one walking by the back of your computer checking your screen to see what's happening. And it's really, you need to make sure that you're hitting whatever metrics you're trying to do and really working hard to do that. How we hire people now, we started with these sort of classic, tell me about a time when personality interviews. And I found those just worked horribly for us. And I'm sure other entrepreneurs out there and agency owners can relate. What we have evolved to over time is a multi-step process, roughly 4 steps. The first being a really in-depth written assessment, as we'll call it, which could be anywhere from 7 to 8 main buckets with questions broken down within them. We tell candidates to spend no more than 2 hours on it. Many spend a good bit less than that. We don't want to make it, people doing too much for no work or whatever. But basically let's use, I've been talking about paid media. We use a paid media account manager as an example. This maybe give a sample situation that a paid media account manager at Galactic Fed might face. Maybe an upset client or a client with really high demands for some goals, or a client has big goals for growth and needing to either maybe tamper their expectations or confirm what they're saying, or even maybe push that client to dream bigger. Giving examples, quantitative examples of what they might say to that client and how they do it's important to us. And we have a couple different steps like that throughout the written assessment where we can really test how they view problems. Another really important part of that, I really believe in this sort of philosophy of A players hire A players and B players hire C players. So you really want to get the best people in the world, especially in leadership positions, because then the people they hire underneath them will make your job as a manager way easier, because you can trust that that person running a team will be hiring really good people. Whereas if you hire someone who's just okay, then they'll be a little more lax in their expectations, and the people they hire will be even worse. So one important thing we do in our hiring process is we have this, we do the reverse reference check, as we call it, or the almost threat of reference check, where in the very beginning, there's a grid and people have to list, okay, tell us your most 5 recent managers, the people who directly manage you. And what would they rate you on a 1 to 10 scale, with 10 being the best, and why? And we make it clear, like when we speak with that person, what will we say? And at the bottom of that, we say, we reserve the right to contact anybody for a reference, regardless of if you listed them yourself, with the caveat that we'll not contact people at their current company. And if they gave a problem about a certain person, maybe there was a major toxic relationship, we wouldn't do that. We're human after all. But this helps us, have people be really honest up front about what they've done in the past and how good people view them, since the past relationships from a manager perspective are often the most telling of how they're going to do in the future. And we found that people are a little less willing to fudge and exaggerate their accomplishments if they know and had to write down the names and emails of the folks that manage them, and they can expect that we're going to ask them about those things. So anyways, written assessment, big part of the process. After that, again, varies on the role, but we also have a role playing type of interview where we'll give them a brief that'll say, you are the paid media account manager. You're about to go in and chat with a client who has XYZ goals. I'm going to role play being the client. Let's do this for an hour or a half hour, and then we'll talk about it afterwards and see how it went. We find this is important to make sure that people can handle the dialogue and the back and forth that comes with client relations, since that can be difficult for folks sometimes. And then after those first two steps, then we do these sort of culture fits, personality based type of interviews.
So you're not going to just ask me what my greatest weakness is so we can talk about how I just care too much.
You just try too hard, Mark. Mike, sorry, you work too hard.
That's right. That's right. No, I love that. That's fascinating. I love how much time you're putting into and thought into crafting a very tailored experience and hiring process for each individual employee and position. Now, earlier you also talked about culture, and I want to touch on that for a minute. I want you to share how you're addressing that because again, this is a fully remote company. You can't just take folks to happy hour on Fridays and have that one-on-one time or whatever it is that one might normally do in an in-person environment today. How are you tackling that, particularly with new employees and reinforcing it while it's on a remote basis?
Yeah, so I found that culture is built top down, middle out, and bottom up. So from a top down perspective, when I started the company, and still now, both myself, Irina, my co-founder, and I have a very what we try to be trusting and understanding and casual environment and relationship with our team, where we make jokes, we use exclamation marks in our messages, we use tons of emojis, and we really, beyond that sort of superficial stuff, we really tried our best to set an example that we understand that people make mistakes, that bad things will happen, that you'll do something that you didn't mean to do. And we want to make sure we set an environment where we are often owning our mistakes to our team when we say, man, I wish I had done this differently. I want to apologize. I wish I'd done something else. That really sets an example that folks are able to do that themselves and they're able to be more relaxed because that's natural. That's work. Things will happen. And what's important is learning to grow from it. From a more middle out perspective, I'd say I've spoken about this earlier, but I just really, really care a lot about the folks that we hire, especially in a management perspective, and making sure that they are telegraphing the culture and who we are and what we do and how we view things. I wouldn't want to hire someone as a manager who seems like they're extremely tough all the time, or they're rough on their team, or they push too hard. At the same time, I wouldn't want to hire folks on our team who are afraid of keeping people accountable and are afraid of saying, you said you do this thing by this date and it didn't happen. Can we chat about it and see what happens? And we haven't had to let go of too many folks at the company, relative, especially to companies our size and our peers. But of course, that's something that we've had to do. I've had to let people go, and that's the least favorite part of the job for me. But I think that's also an important thing for managers to be able to do is realize when someone's not a good fit at your company. That might be because their performance not good, or maybe it's just not working out, and do a good job of coaching them out and make sure they feel good about it. That's super important too, I think, and making sure that you carry the culture forward in a good way. And finally, these sort of bottom up things too. We are fully remote. Most of us have never met in real life. I try and meet folks in real life whenever I can, but we try our best to build community online within Slack primarily is sort of our internal water cooler. So we have all these different channels that are like community parenting or dogs or travel or music festivals or whatever it may be. And these are just such active hubs where people chat all the time. Like any given day, there's things being traded there, whether that's song recommendations or photos of a new place that someone's visited. Addition to that, we do regular quarterly, monthly or so, all hands and team type calls where we just get to know people on a better one-on-one basis, personal basis. We, from the very start, when we do these kind of bigger calls, wouldn't do the classic, like, here's a deck, I'm going to walk you through the company updates. We would do a show and tell for the first half hour to an hour, where every person on the team would bring one physical object from around their lives, whether that's a surfboard or a hot sauce collection or a spouse, and just tell us a bit about that person or thing for a minute. And we found that was a good scaffold for further conversations to come from there. So again, top down, middle out, bottom up. I think culture comes from many different directions.
Sir, fantastic recommendations. Some great ideas. I hope those of you listening are writing some of them down. We're talking with Zach Boyette about the challenge and the opportunities of scaling a fully remote agency and everything that affords. And I've got a bunch more questions for Zach. So hang tight. But first, a story from one of our valued agency clients at Agorapulse, J29.
Social media management is such a growing market. It's what websites used to be during the dot-com era. It's very challenging, especially for the small to medium-sized business owners, because they really can't do it on their own. And if they do want to do it on their own, it can get very expensive. It's a missing piece in today's market. As the owner of a digital marketing agency, it became very challenging to be able to manage all these different accounts. We were working easily 10 to 12-hour days, not being able to spend time with our family. We started seeking out a social media platform. I know there's HubSpot, there's Hootsuite.
What I really noticed with each tool was that there was always something missing. We were looking for something that was all-encompassing.
And we found Agora Pulse. It posts automatically, but not just to one social media channel, but multiple. And it really transformed J29 Creative to what it is today.
Out of the box, we were able to accomplish what we needed.
It allows our social media managers to work anywhere, anytime.
I spend a lot of time meeting with our individual clients, helping them manage and strategize. So being able to, on the fly, take a look at the posting schedule that we've set up has been great.
It has allowed us to also show our clients an ROI, because one of the most challenging things with social media management is putting dollar figures to what we're doing. It has charts and graphs to be able to show those things.
Whether I'm working with my copywriters, some of my video editors, or my graphic designers, Agora Pulse is really great because it helps us work with many different moving parts.
The biggest thing with social media, in order to do it well, it takes time. And when it takes time, it takes away from your family, your vacations, and the ability to be able to just relax.
It has really helped me give the best service I can to my clients and provide the best solution to managing a social media account.
As business owners, we all need time for ourselves. And that's what Agora Pulse allows us to do.
All right, so one challenge many older traditional agencies, we kind of touched on this before, they're facing a transition to partial or fully remote work environments, and they've got these long-standing practices for monitoring, for ensuring productivity, and none of that applies anymore. Like you said, they can't look over my shoulder and see if I'm working today, and you've got employees working from diverse time zones and cultures, and it can look like trying to hold water in your hands. What are some of the systems, maybe, or tools, or even methodologies that you've employed to make sure all of your agency employees are getting work done?
Yeah, so I think that, as you mentioned, a lot of the more old school practices, especially whether they're in person or not, really depended on sort of just watching how much people are doing and trying to figure out, if they're in the office right now, if they're still in line, that must mean they're doing good work. At Galactic Fed, we do some of that. We for many roles ask folks to submit weekly timesheets showing how they spent the breakdown of different time throughout the day. This is less of a big brother trying to see if people are working 8 hours a day. This is more seeing, okay, if a social media manager typically spends, an SEO manager spends, let's say, 2 hours on an audit normally, but this manager on average is spending 5 hours. It's a good opportunity for us to take a look at them and break down through the funnel of what they're doing and say, okay, maybe here's a way that you can do your work better. But what I think that when I think of this sort of productivity thing, I think of what are some of the areas where I see that in-person companies and remote companies typically waste time, in my opinion. And I think one of the biggest sources of wasted time is these recurring phone calls that many companies have that, as an individual contributor, maybe you'll have a daily stand-up and maybe a weekly team call, then maybe a monthly all hands or something like that on your cadence. And then as you move up and you're a manager, maybe then you'll also have one-on-ones with everyone on your team, and you'll have an internal alignment with your leadership and a few other things. And by the time you're a director or VP, you find that 20, 30 hours per week of your time is just on phone calls, especially recurring phone calls. So at the beginning of Galactic Fed, I took a sort of unconventional approach where I said that if anyone wanted to schedule a recurring phone call, they had to ask me for permission before doing it, because I found that so often these recurring phone calls just didn't add a lot of value. And that's especially important for us now at Galactic Fed, being so remote and in so many time zones. We do most of our work, Mike, in writing. So Slack, ClickUp, Google Docs, most of our stuff is operationalized in writing. And we have a go-to method for doing pretty much everything, whether that be kicking off a new client account or letting a client know that we need to change direction, or on hiring and onboarding a new team member. pretty much everything is operationalized and systematized. And that allows us to really check, you know, based on the amount of times that folks are putting in per hour to do certain things versus what the other team members are doing in similar positions to get the thing done that we know needs to get done because it's operationalized. That allows us to help track things and make sure people are getting things done well. Additionally, we track and maintain catalogs of just understanding on an individual team member basis. Like, let's say it's, again, to use the pay media account manager position, what is their average client spend rate they manage? How many clients do they manage? What is their client attrition? What is their client net promoter score? And being able to understand all these stats as well, I find that a more performance oriented outcome and measurement rather than a time oriented one helps us do a lot better and reward people who are working hard and doing well.
Your point about and your focus on time really resonated with me. I identified a couple of years ago that time is one of my top values. I am jealous of my time. And when someone wants to meet with me every single week, I'm like, maybe how about every other week, maybe once a month? I don't know that we need to meet every single week because I'm already thinking about whether or not we would actually need that time every single week. And sometimes we do, but there are a lot of times where we don't need that kind of cadence. And so I appreciate that you brought that up. And I really like the idea of making sure that you have that, you have granted permission for them to book that time and take the company's time and their time and apply it that way. Now, earlier, I love that you mentioned, we talked a little bit about how you're doing organic social media as part of a growth marketing umbrella. I'm wondering, how are you actually measuring the impact of social media on your clients' businesses? This is a topic I love to bring up and talk about with agencies because everyone's doing it a little bit differently. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think for us, it's really like looking at the impact of social can be, it depends if we're doing it with the funnel from a paid media or SEO approach, or if it's a pure organic approach, or if it's influencer. So I will caveat that the different approaches that we're taking can have different metrics for how we want to measure them. But I think it's important to view social not just as direct, last touch conversions. I think it's really important to have a good look at the full funnel and see how the touches throughout the social funnel are aiding in the eventual conversions that you're trying to make. Because social is something that it can touch people at so many different times in so many different ways throughout the customer's journey that you really do need it to be something that is aiding and assisting. And maybe it is direct, but that's not always what we see.
Fantastic. And one fun question I always like to ask agencies, what shouldn't clients do? What would get them fired from Galactic Fed? And maybe can you share an example?
Yeah, I'd say some of the most obvious are we've had a few clients, hardly any, but a few that were generally just untowards to my team. Were maybe saying sexist or even racist or et cetera comments, and even ones that weren't so bad. Maybe they were just a little bit abusive. They used coarse language. We have a no tolerance for those sorts of situations with clients, even if they're paying us bukus of dollars. Again, my biggest focus at Galactic Fed is building a strong culture, a strong team of people who get along, have a good time, and enjoy their work. And so when clients start doing anything that is threatening or rude, that's an obvious no. But that's an easy answer, right? I hope that all agency owners do that. I'd say that something that can be tough is just when clients don't listen or don't want the feedback or the advice or the experts growth tactics that we're giving. We hope that when clients hire us, they're hiring us for a reason. They understand that we're very good at what we do. But we've had situations with clients where we'll say, okay, our recommendation is to write ads in this way or to go live on this channel. And the client will say, I read this article or I asked ChatGPT and it said to do something different. So I want you to do that different thing. And then we say, we really must insist. And they say, no, I'm paying you, you do it. We say, okay. And then we do the thing they ask and it didn't work. And then they're upset with us. And those are difficult relationships to manage. When I hire a plumber to come to my house, I'm not under the sink with them directing about which pipes to hook up and which nozzles to screw and such. And of course, some clients have a larger understanding of marketing than others, and it's rightly okay for them to have opinions of what we're doing there. But I think that if they're hiring us for our expert opinions and our growth and what we know has worked, working with over 600 companies now, then it usually works best if they trust us.
It's tremendous advice, and it's a comment that's been echoed by many of the agencies that have come on here. And I haven't figured out how yet, but I'm going to figure out some way to communicate all of this to clients so they stop being abusive, they stop acting like they know what's best in marketing because they don't, or else they wouldn't have hired. Certainly, as you said, they can have an opinion, they can have a voice. but they need to trust us. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Just one last question, Zach. And again, it's another one of these fun questions I love asking all agency owners. What tools haven't we talked about that are in your tech stack? You've talked about Slack. You talked about ClickUp. You mentioned it for a second ago. What else is in your tech stack?
Yeah, I spoke about it a bit, but I really can't say enough about ClickUp. Our entire teams, I'd say Slack is sort of our water cooler where people hang out. That replaces the in-person collaboration that we might do. But ClickUp for us is really the spine of how we organize the company. That is where a lot of these organizational docs that I referenced, the operational blueprints, those are all blueprinted within ClickUp. And maybe that might be a certain framework or workspace within ClickUp that links out to Google Docs. But we found that having really well-organized ClickUp workspaces makes it way easier to copy and paste and replicate so that it's easier to scale new hires into the company and help them understand our culture as well. But yeah, I think if I had to give one plug, it'd be ClickUp. That's been a really great tool for us.
Terrific. And I don't know that anybody's brought up ClickUp yet on the show. So fantastic. Thank you for that. Zach, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. For those who want to learn more about you, about Galactic Fed, where can they go?
Yeah, so if you need help with any growth marketing, any online digital marketing, we'd love to help, whether that's building a website, running your paid ads campaigns, getting your SEO ranking better, or doing your email marketing or organic social, as Mike and I chatted about. galacticfed.com, or just search us on Galactic Fed. We're happy to help you make your dreams become reality and help you grow your marketing.
Terrific. Thank you, Zach. And folks, that's all the time we've got for today. You'll find Zach's LinkedIn profile, Galactic Fed's website, all the things, every episode that we past mentioned in this episode, they'll all be linked in the show notes below. So be sure to check that out. And please visit Apple and leave us a review. Let us know what you think on iTunes. And until next time, we'll see you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Social Pulse Podcast Agency Edition, hosted by Mike Alton and powered by AgoraPulse, the #1 rated social media management solution, which you can learn more about at agorapulse.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast player and be sure to leave us a review. Your feedback is important to us.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the boys' club of advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.